For 2 weeks, we gave them a heck of a lot of stick. After week three's matches, we gave them a pat on the back, or at least our version of it. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's use it or lose it, where we bash the Aussies, and I have a feeling my guest might get stuck into it yet again this week. Steve, let's start you off there. We were entertained royally by the Aussies a week ago, but this past weekend, it wasn't close, and one was seriously dull. It's maybe start off with that Brumbies game. I'm sure you stayed awake for the entire 80.
Off the Brumbies game. Oh, we're starting completely off the track this time. Of course, I stayed awake for the whole entire game. Was I completely, entirely glued to the match? Not a chance at that at all. The Brumbies played well in a couple of 10-minute passages, didn't they? They look exceptional. They scored some brilliant tries. And then, just like most of the fans watching in the stands and at home, they went to sleep and just fell over some tackles and pretty much stopped the Force from being that desperate side to score lots of points. Weird game. Really, really weird game. I thought that one. Just the inability of the Force, a team that loved to score tries, was so desperate to score tries. But I guess that shows up the good defensive attributes that the Brumbies did bring to that game, which was quite an entertaining way to look at it. If you wanted to, if you love your defensive work, if you love your forward play and you don't like exciting back play rugby, this was probably the game that you'd like to watch on repeat. But yeah, the Brumbies did what they had to do, didn't they, in that one? They defended well. They took the chances they got. Tom Wright played a great game, and they didn't really need anyone else.
Paul, I'm sure you enjoyed the good old wet scrap just as much as any other Kiwi around. But the Force finally not choking up a point. I'm pretty chuffed that they at last delivered to my expectations.
Yeah, not so much kind of like get a good start and then fading away, was it? It was a really awful start and then never really getting going. You got to feel a bit sorry for them, a bit sorry for the fans, really. As Steve says, yeah, the Brumbies promised so much in that first 5 minutes when they scored 2 tries. You're thinking this could be a cracker of a display by them, and then just went, well, hey, we're leading, who cares? We'll just go to sleep. Look, I'm being an Englishman. Obviously, I was disappointed with the lack of mud. If you're going to have a wet game, we want lots and mud, and unable to tell who is who by about the half an hour mark. Otherwise, what's the point in it being wet? Love a good Manukau Rovers game here up in Auckland, or up there in Auckland, where they do have a nice mud patch. So yes, got to not enough mud for a rainy game for me, but apart from that, all good.
But let's be honest, I mean, the kick clashes we have these days, you don't really need the mud to not know which team is which, do you? Because they look straight similar as soon as they come out into the park.
True. Perhaps that's the kind of like, hey, look, guys, our pictures are too good. We've got to make our jerseys the same. Otherwise, it's not going to confuse people enough.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's Indigenous round in the NRL this weekend, so I think you might have a few guys supporting the wrong team for the first 10 minutes. So that's also going to be a pretty interesting on their side. Rebels Waratahs there again.
Actually, can we do a little sidetracking about jerseys? Ben Darwin, a guy from Gainline Analytics, has done some research, and teams that wear a sort of one-off jersey are less likely to win than teams who wear their actual jersey. And there's actually a significant difference in wearing an away jersey to a home jersey, and so forth. So yeah, changing your jersey actually reduces your chance of winning the game. It might increase your sales of jerseys and your money, but you're likely to lose. So I would say win more games to sell more jerseys rather than just print out new ones all the time.
At least you're the Chiefs.
Yeah, particularly Chiefs. Everyone who is anyone who's a coach, why don't you train in the same color you play in, right? Everything else you're trying to recreate the game atmosphere, you're trying to recreate the game situation, train as you play, but then you wear a different color jersey. And to me, I don't get that. So when you see someone out the corner of your eye on game day, it should be a color you're used to, and that's how you pass. And it goes. So there you go. Coaching tip for all coaches out there: you've missed a trick here, folks. You're training in the wrong color.
Well, that wouldn't really work, because if the fly off and the inside center throw that intercept pass, they need an excuse. So obviously they're not going to sign up for this same color thing. And then just as a very superstitious punter myself, I must say when I switch on the TV for a game and I see my team is all of a sudden playing in pink or some alternative kit, I'm already worried. I'm seriously concerned because I'm mentally ready to support the Crusaders in red. So it's not going to work for me.
So hang on. So where did you play back in the day? What was your position?
Scrum off, number 9.
There we go. Yeah, you want it. Yeah, I want an excuse for that intercept pass. Exactly. There we go. Not. I can see. I see. There we go.
No, the excuse for that one was ref, they offside.
That hangover from the what they call them superhero kits over in South Africa, isn't it? You're still trying to get over those, aren't you?
Oh no, man, those were brilliant, guys. Come on.
I'd say the which one was it? The Captain America really did look like a kid's dress up. One, yeah, they'd gone to the party store and just bought a kid's dress up one and just gone, hey guys, just draw it like that. It'll work.
Okay, so after all our Aussies, our last South African has left as well. Again, this show just keeps on losing. Use it or lose it. We're focusing on the lose it part, yeah, guys. Yeah, I thought Paul was weird having his test shirt out there as the only one this week. Seriously trying to claim the win over the West Indies there. It's not much to brag about.
Just, rebuilding the set as we talk. For those of you who look, everybody, you've missed the best content. The best content all happened before we started recording, unfortunately. But hey, we might try and recreate some of that later.
I was gonna say we're seriously not trying to replicate it. It sounds like at this stage it's going south. Rebels and the Waratahs, Steve, come and bring some sanity to the show. Yeah, your thoughts on that? I actually thought the Waratahs were going to stick well and truly in it, and then all of a sudden, they just went to sleep, as they pretty much well known for.
I find it quite funny how you wanted to get some sanity back into the show, and you start talking about the Waratahs. I mean, geez, you've gone to completely opposites there. The Waratahs, God, no. Terrible, absolutely terrible. Start to finish. I mean, they only scored one try, and that was an intercept try completely against the run of play. Other than that, they didn't look like they were going to do anything for the whole 80 minutes. They weren't even in that game at all. They were completely they weren't completely outplayed by the Rebels. They were completely outplayed by themselves. They just weren't at that level of play at all. Their key players were clearly frustrated and annoyed and just not mentally in the game right from the get-go. They were doing stupid things. Michael Hooper especially. I mean, I praised him two weeks ago for saying he actually had a really good match. So I feel that I can absolutely lay into him and say how absolute rubbish he was last week, because I've given a little bit of praise. Now it's back to normal Michael Hooper sort of comments. So yeah, he was rubbish, absolute rubbish. Didn't show any composed leadership. Didn't show any of that, good play around the ruck. He was consistently offside. He was consistently doing stupid stuff that you'd expect from a rookie. Trying to make a play and get himself out there in the game. Not what you expect from him. Got the yellow card as well. Just mentally not really at the game at all. And the Rebels, I mean, again, much like the Brumbies, they just did what they had to do. They played well enough. They knew they were probably just going to have to play their own game, because the Waratahs weren't going to offer anything in a way of resistance, that they had to change what they were doing. They just had to keep consistently, chip away, build their points up, make sure they don't do anything stupid, like that intercept pass that got the Waratahs all those points that they did, that mighty 7. Just chip away at it, carry on going. And they did it pretty easily in the end. I mean, their biggest ever win over the Waratahs as well. And when you look through the stats of this game, you probably wonder why it wasn't double that score.
And I have some stats for you. Look, I've actually got something positive or something
planned segue
to contribute to this game. Hooper, 5 penalties. When's the last time you've seen a player concede 5 penalties, especially if they're not a prop, right? Getting destroyed at scrum time. So yeah, disastrous game for him with those 5 penalties. Man of the match for me, Hardwick for the Rebels. He made 11 tackles in a game where the Rebels only had to make 58, and that's he was basically carrying that team defensively. The fact that so big. I personally think that's impressive. A player who makes 20% of the tackles for the team. Good on Hardwick.
I must say, I think the last time I saw someone get 5 penalties might have been an English prop in some certain World Cup final. But let's not make this about South Africa yet again. Guys, the expectation for this weekend, Western Force, we just touched on them previously, and the Rebels did just what they needed to do, I suppose, as you guys said. Where did the Force go from here? I see they've got Pryor back, a few little changes. I'll actually throw the team on there. Paul, maybe start us off with this game.
Oh, it's all down to I think the number 12 jersey, isn't it? Yes, Richard Kahui's going to start this week. There we go. So that's the big one. The age of free badass analysis. Wow, okay, interesting advert you got there. Distracted there. Look, they're getting to get. So you say Ian Price back. They're getting Richard Kahui to start. So that they're starting to get some of their more experienced players on the pitch. It's John O'Lance, even in a losing side, is making a good case for being the Wallaby number 10 this year. I think because it's mainly going to be, well, at least in the Bledisloe Cup tests. So look, hopefully we're going to see what we saw from 2 weeks ago, which is that look, they're actually in the game initially, and then and then fade out of it. But I can't see them. I can't see them winning the game. To be honest, looking at anything, Stephen, on the Force you want to talk about before I go on to the Rebels?
Go for the Rebels. I can recap.
You can recap. Oh, okay then. Moving on to the Rebels. Meeks had a shocker last week, didn't he? So I'm surprised to see him still there in that 12 jersey. Really, a bit surprised to see Kellaway as well into a 13 jersey. I mean, you think that they've got plenty of depth at centre, and they go and put a winger in there. So some interesting selections there from the Rebels. I would have kept Hodge at 13 rather than moving him back to 15, and then but yeah, so some strange selections there by for the Rebels, which probably doesn't which probably shouldn't surprise us. We've been seeing some strange selections from teams all the way through this competition, and I've not looked at it yet, but the Highlanders selections one could give you an idea as to who those seven drunkards were, because I think what we've seen is that sometimes when you see a player drops and you think, why is he being dropped? It's off the field issues that they managed to keep out of the press. So you do wonder if a couple of the players who aren't there, are they really being rested? And which you can do against the Force, let's be honest. Or is there off-field stuff that's shenanigans going on?
I'm not sure whether any Aussie team is quite strong enough to rest players at this stage. Cornflake, your views?
I mean, don't you just love it? The Australian media, All Black and Wallaby join forces. Oh, it's Kyle Godwin and Richard Kahui, the mainstays of international rugby, that they are going to join forces and align the Anzac spirit. All that sort of Yahoo is back. They come up with every cliche they can think of, don't they, to make something look a little bit more fancy. Yeah, but that's going to be the big part of their game, isn't it? I mean, I find this is going to be tough for the Force to get anything from this one. I think they started off with that little flurry. They showed that they are a team that probably don't have that sort of grind down game plan like a Brumbies sort of do have. The team that's got the long stay in mind. They're a team that wants to go out there. They want to be flamboyant and want to be exciting and want to entertain the crowd, which, I mean, I guess that's what global rapid rugby was all about as well. So you see that probably coming through them now. This is probably a game that's going to suit them more. I think that Brumbies game was always going to be something a little bit out of their comfort zone in terms of playing style and accommodating their team to play that sort of way. But yeah, they've got a chance here against the Rebels, albeit a tough one. But they need a bit of start than they got last week. They need those big guys in that midfield. Kahui, I thought he was quite strong in his appearance off the bench last week. He certainly hasn't changed his play style, has he? He just runs straight into people. He's kind of the old school big midfield player. But yeah, he's going to be massive. But I wonder about Marcel Braki on the wing. As great as a player he is, he offers so much more in midfield and just doesn't have that X-factor sort of finishing ability that you want in your guy that's wearing your number 11. So that's a bit of a concern. They don't have as much of that sort of, player in that back line. So a lot of pressure, I guess, goes on Byron Ralston on that other side. That he's going to have that capability with him and Jack McGregor to be those finishing guys. And you kind of got 3 centres who are going to be running out there with Jono Lance, who's going to be a massive part, once again, like Paul says, of this team and that back row. So we talked about this a lot of times over the last few weeks. Stowers, Ferris and Stander, those 3 guys are massive for this team. And I think they need to just slow things down a bit. Play the long game. Take some penalties. Get yourself on the scoreboard. Build up a little bit of confidence in how you're playing. Try to, dominate the game in that position, in that territory sort of style, and tick the points over. Because if you don't get the 7, we saw it last week, what happens to them. And it has that snowball effect where it just rolls on for them. So they need to go back to that old, sort of Brumby style of play. Get points on the board. Try to keep in the game. Stay within, a score or so of your opponent and try and win the game at the end by doing something, special and playing the full 80 minutes rather than just trying to blow the team off the park right at the start, which, as we've seen, doesn't work for them either. On for the Rebels, what I'm really surprised with the Rebels here is they've got Faa Masili is on the bench. I mean, he's a standout performer from Australia. He's the best man in this team. I'm really disappointed that they've not started with him. But, we'll see him off the bench, I guess, like Paul says. Maybe they are putting a little rest in here. It's the Western Force. The most dangerous thing you can do against the Western Force and any team like them is to underestimate them, is to take them too easy, is to go, it's just the Sunwolves, it's just the Force, it's just the Kings. Remember that, Waratahs? It's just the Kings. Well, you weren't saying that at the end of 80 minutes, Warriors. This time, they got to go out and still do their professional job here. No Dane Haylett-Petty. So that's why Reece Hodge is gone to fullback. So that's a bit of a loss for them. What's going on with him, though, I'm not 100% sure. But, it does make their midfield just a little bit weaker without him running through there. So, for me, this is, Rebels all day. But mentally, they've got to be at the game still. They've got to get there. They've got to do the professional job. They've got to play the game out, execute their game plan. Because the Force are a team, like I said before, if you take them lightly, if you underestimate them, if you give them a chance or two, let them get their tails up, they're a team that are hard to put back down once they get away. So they've still got to really go out there and play their game plan.
What did I say about players not getting selected? You don't know why? You now know, folks.
I was going to say, I'm surprised. I'm just surprised, Paul. I'm surprised there that all these teams taken lightly. I thought he'd thrown the Highlanders there as well.
Well, we're not talking about New Zealand yet, are we? We'll talk about that afterwards. But I guess perhaps the idea of having Fa'amausili on the bench is that, look, he doesn't have the fitness to go a full 80, does he? Let's be honest. So maybe he often gets pulled quite early. So maybe part of it is to have him rampaging against a tiring defence. And boy, that could be that could be very one-sided.
It's interesting you talk about rampaging against tight defence. Isa Nasarani is back as well. So he's going to become rumbling into this number 8 position. So it's good to see him back. He's definitely a standout performer. And it's going to be a big back row battle, as it is with the Force. We talked about those key guys in their back row are going to be key. He could be a big game changer because he is going to keep them busy defensively when he's got the ball in hand. So I'm keen to see how he's going to go, how up to speed he is, because I think just for the Rebels, but I think Australia-wise as well, he could be an important cog for that team.
I don't think we should probably sort of mention in passing about these two teams that both of them are on. Neither of them are staying at home; they're both staying in hotels because of coronavirus, all that kind of stuff. So, how much is that now starting to play on these teams? Are they starting to get a bit tired about being on the road? We've seen South African teams sometimes when they go on tour. By the 4th game, they want to go home. And maybe there's an element of that from both these teams now, as well as that they both would like to get home at some point in the near future.
I must say, I think it's big for the Force to have the two centres there finally in combination. Probably two of the better players. I know they probably past their prime, but they're still an upgrade for the Force for me to have Kauhui and Godwin there. I think that's a plus, and Pryor back is huge. I think that just makes a bit of a difference. And as you guys say, the back row is going to be crucial. At the end of the day, though, they've still got Naisarani on the other team and Korabete and those guys. Big loss, Haylett-Petty for me. But yes, I'm definitely going to have a little last try scorer on my man Fa'amausili to come and be like a human missile off the bench there. So that's the biggest thing I'm looking forward to out of this clash. Guys, then on to something that's probably like a little bit or possibly a glimpse into a final. Brumbies and Reds. I think at this stage it looked like they could be the two main teams. Paul, I'll start you off on this one. Obviously, the Brumbies again just did what they needed to do, showed a little bit of that rolling ball and strength in the pack that you'd expect from them in wet weather rugby, but doing it against the Force is something different than showing it against the Reds.
Yeah, no, and I think actually it might be Brumbies Rebels in the final rather than Brumbies Reds. So I think it's Stephen's not agreeing with you there for people listening to the podcast rather than watching the video. So whilst this is top of the table, when the Rebels beat the Force, they'll climb above the Reds into second place. So it is going to be a tight. It's a tight battle for that second place between those two. Looking at this team, well, yeah, actually, I mean, the interesting was those first two tries. It was a they scored one from their own half off the back of a scrum on a first phase move. And the other one was from a turnover ball, again in their own half. So they can attack from deep. They're not just a rolling maul team. So they can do it. It's a question of actually, will they bother to do it? Let's be honest with you. Valentini needs a good game. He was a bit off sorts last week, and we always talk about we talked already about the back rows being important. So he needs to step up this week, I think, really from him. Bailey Kawitsi, the very young fly half. It's been good to see him playing and stepping up to this level pretty seamlessly, to be honest. He's had a good start. It helps having someone experienced like Simone outside him and Joe Powell inside him. So it's good to have that experience around him. Kieran Durrani, another guy who really hasn't done much yet so far. So I'm looking forward to him stepping up, having a big game at some point, because he is a rampaging player. But when we talk about the Reds, yeah, it's going to be the forwards that are going to need to stand up and stop that forward pack from the Reds, isn't it? Particularly the Tongan Thor. He always gets them over the gain line. And again, that right Wilson in the back, and Scott Young, those back rows again. That's where there's going to be a big battle for this. I guess the other thing is going to be lineouts. Can the Brumbies disrupt the Reds lineouts? If they do, then that's going to basically just give them no platform. So that could be the way for the Brumbies to sort of just keep the lid on this Red side that can. Look, Jordan Pataya coming back off on the bench. That's kind of cool to see him back. But I think the lineup could be a key thing here that the Reds could struggle with.
Steve,
you took my point away from me there, Paul. I was about to say John Pataya's taken all the plaudits back to Australian rugby. So it's going to be he's taken a bit of that attention away from the NRL guy that they were trying to sign and throw billions of dollars at him, weren't they? So everyone's moved on back to Jordan. He's going to win the Wallabies the World Cup, and that was last year, wasn't it? Not this year. Yeah. So this is I think an intriguing game. Because this could potentially be, well, obviously it's going to be the game of the round, I think, by quite some distance, but it could be actually a good game of rugby, because you think about the Brumbies and you think about the Reds, and the first thing you think about both these two sides is the fact they've got really good forward packs. They play a bit differently with those forward packs. The Brumbies a bit more old school, going to the old maul and from the line out and that sort of play, whereas the Reds like to run around and squash people. But all in the end of the day, they both have really good forward packs. I think this game, the two teams have to think a little bit differently. It's number one default here. They've got to go to that pack to get that advantage. When things go wrong for the Brumbies, they go to that maul. The two teams have to, I think outside the square here. They've got to go to the back line. They've got to go to something different. They've got to try win the game in another area, because I think this is a game where the two teams are probably going to cancel each other out in the pack. You're going to get a little period where the Reds are going to get up over the pack, over the Brumbies, and you're going to have the Brumbies will fight it back. It's going to be, to and fro between them. The backs is where this game could really be a difference maker. I find it interesting there too, because you've got the Reds, so I think got the advantage in the halves, although they are not starting Tate McDermott, which is a bit of a concern, but still over the young Kunzel that Paul was talking about before, surely they would have had the advantage there, having that experience and all those playmakers they got throughout that team, the Stewarts and the O'Connors and the likes there. But it's further out that really the Brumbies could completely take this game away with the exceptional form of Tom Wright, the Kurandrani, like Paul says, who's done nothing all season, and it's starting to get a bit of a concern as to when he's actually going to start playing well for this Brumbies team. They've got the excitement out wide, but are they going to think outside that square? Because I think defensively the Reds won't match that on that Brumbies attack. But the two sides have to use those backs to attack. We have to see the Reds using those playmakers, putting pressure on them. Defensively, I think these teams may get a little bit found out as you both hopefully will go all out on attack and go away from that bashing forward pack, which is probably going to get no one anywhere, and get a little bit expansive, get a little bit exciting, and use those exciting guys outside and try and beat them in a different sort of way. So that's what I'm hoping, because that's about the only difference I can see between these two teams. I think it should be, though, a nice, exciting contest between what I think are the two best teams in Australian rugby. Down with the Rebels.
Clearly you're wrong, but it's going to be bone dry in Canberra because we need to talk about weather, obviously. Yes. So that's not going to help the that's not going to help the Brumbies because O'Connor looks awful in the wet at 10, but in the dry he can be the magic that unleashes that team. So bone dry in Canberra for this weekend.
It's strange looking at this Brumbies team. I mean, everyone knows they're rolling more in their power up front and a strong front row, and then you still got Valentini and Samu in the Lucies, so it's big ball carriers, and obviously they've got a young 10, but still outside that. Keita is his second game back. Tom Banks is second game back, I think, or third. So they're starting. Surely, hopefully, they'll show a little bit more form. And as you guys said, Kurandrani just doesn't quite click. But to me, on paper, this Brumbies team has just got the entire package. So it's just a case of whether they can click on the lawn. And as you guys said as well, it's probably a good idea for the Brumbies. I think the Reds will be so up for this one. Brad Thorne, a forward-orientated coach as well. He loves to give the youngsters some free rein. But I mean, that's where his focus is. If the Brumbies almost just fly a surprise and just tuck it around a little bit, I think they could actually catch the Reds unaware, because they'll be so up for this forward battle and not expect the K-chain to be running loose. So hopefully that's what we're going to see this weekend. On that note, let's go over to the New Zealand rugby and let's go straight into the mighty Crusaders coming up short on their home patch. I couldn't believe it. It's shocking. I still check the scores every now and again just to make sure whether it's the truth. Cornflake, what happened there?
Well, we've talked about this one quite a bit over the week, and I mean, one thing keeps coming back up and repeating itself is how this game actually come to fruition for the Hurricanes. There was the fact that they played the full, well, it wasn't 80 minutes, it was probably more like 85 minutes of the game. So many times this season, so many times past seasons, so many times when you see the Crusaders playing, teams never play the full game. There's always that period, whether it be either side of the halves, whether it be at the end of the second half, there's always that period where sides fall asleep, where they just let their concentration lapse, and that is when the Crusaders strike. And let's be honest, watching that game, you saw it. You saw them ramping up the pace. You saw them putting the clutch down and going down for another gear, looking to hammer on the pressure. Richie Mo'unga's game stepped up. All the signs were there, and you're thinking to yourself when you're watching, it's about to happen. It didn't happen. And that was the big difference. The Hurricanes had enough to hold it out right to the bitter end. And I'll tell you what, they got everything thrown at them in that final little stanza. The Crusaders played their game as they do every week, to a T. They played their game plan. They were within a chance. They got close, but they just couldn't seal the deal. And I mean, you've got to 100% give that credit to the Hurricanes for just playing it out right to the very end. And they played well. They had key guys throughout that team. We talk about Laumape, how good he was, but it was the man outside of Umang Jensen who was the guy, I think, that stood up this week. Laumape was good. He got injured. Umang Jensen scored ultimately probably the match-winning try and got injured himself. But those guys had set the platform. And I think after that, it was a defensive effort. The team effort you don't often see teams get up over the Crusaders in that sort of instance as well. So great game, brilliant game to watch. And like you say, you're watching it and you're just waiting because you know that the Crusaders are going to do something. You know that they just won't fall at this last hurdle like this. We just don't see it happen. And they just couldn't do it. And it was just mind-blowing to watch it and see it actually happen. And see, I mean, that's 4 years since they've been at home? 4 years since we've sat there and continually watched the Crusaders do that little something right at the end to turn the result around. So brilliant to see. Great for the competition. Everyone's all celebrating how the competition is all wide open yet again. But I think realistically, we know who's still got one hand, 4.5 fingers on that trophy ready to go. But yeah, great to see, and good on the Hurricanes. I mean, I'm all for the Blues going down that pecking order as the Hurricanes jump their way up now and relegate the Blues now to a fourth place playoff with the Highlanders this weekend. Yeah, you know what's coming. And I'll credit before I depart on this one. Where's Hoosen? I've given him a bit of stick this season because he's been so ineffective. But, boy, when he goes, he can go. His spark off the mark is fantastic. He was a big game player in that matchup as well. And Ben Lamb's final match was his best match I've seen from him in years, to be completely honest. He's been, that big guy that's been amazing in patches that year when he tried, almost, push his way into the All Blacks and everyone was going, where's Ben Lamb and the All Blacks? Since then, that was his best matchup.
As he leaves to go overseas to Bordeaux. So 4 years,
Exactly.
folks. Everyone's kind of forgetting a certain game. 4 years? 4 years? Really? 4 years? No. 4 years in Super Rugby, maybe, but not 4 years since
Who's
the Crusaders.
that team? No, I thought they only play once every 4 years, don't they? I mean, what sort of record's that?
I don't, but look, they beat the Crusaders down in Christchurch, the British and Irish Lions. It's not been 4 years since the Crusaders have lost at home, folks. It's been 4 years in Super Rugby. Okay, so let's just calm the horse down.
By the way, it's also been 10 months since the Southland Stags lost a match as well. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
Oh, dearie me! In 10 months since they've played. Yes, exactly. Dearie me. Dearie me. So yeah, look, cracking game, wasn't it? One of the games of the season. Absolutely. If you haven't seen it, folks, go back and watch it in its entirety. Don't bother with the highlights. Go watch the whole thing. Cracking game. And spoiler alert: if Richard Mo'unga had made that last conversion, it could have been a draw, and we could have had golden point, not super time like they have in Australia, because we know it's not super. But we could have had golden points over here in New Zealand. So, but he missed that penalty, unfortunately for them, and actually for us in some ways. I think it would be interesting to see how the New Zealand side's approach to golden point. Would they have been as defensive and negative about not losing, like the teams in Australia were, or would they have actually gone for the win rather than sort of the not lose sort of option? So, amazing. Big change in tactics by the Crusaders from first half to second. In the first half, it was kind of like, okay, folks, let's both kick and only play in their half. And then in the second half, it was like, oh dear, we're going to have to keep hold of this ball if we're going to score points. And the Crusaders tried to hold on to the ball and starve the Hurricanes of possession and play through, and it just didn't work. So, but the Hurricanes had different challenges each half, but faced both of them very well.
I must say that towards the end, it looked like the normal procedure for the Crusaders, where they finally wake up, decide to play some rugby, and they were just going to sneak in and win this match. It looked like, we've seen Rocky 1, 2, 3, 4, and this was number 5 coming up. And somehow the Hurricanes just battled it out and managed to get it. So for once, the Crusaders' late run wasn't quite timed well enough. So coming up short, but it's actually quite interesting. I know we probably would talk about this game in any case, but a lot of people are expecting, not really knowing what to expect out of this Chiefs Crusaders game. Chiefs last game at home, and hopefully putting up a heck of a fight and being tired of all these close losses, but at the same time the Crusaders looking to bounce back from a defeat. I mean, it doesn't happen to them often, so usually when they do taste that bitter taste, they don't want to eat that food again. But let's first finish off on the second game. Maybe not quite as okay, I'm not going to say not quite as exciting. It was one heck of a finish, and all the talk this side, and I know it's probably the same your side, is how it was a wrong call on the line there, and a call, Paul, that kept the Blues alive.
No, that's look. If you leave it down to the referee, it's your own fault. Okay, you got to take the referee out of the game. We all know that. So yeah, look, the Chiefs have been on the end of a couple of tough decisions over the last 2 weeks. David McKenzie's just allowed try the week before, and yeah, he should have at least sent it upstairs to be reviewed. Let's be blunt. But it didn't happen. So let's move on from that. Look, David McKenzie looking a lot better. We saw him much more active in this game. But we get back to this selection kind of thing. Who is the starter? Is it Cruden? Is it Trask? What are you doing? You keep switching them around. Then that's kind of, look, give Brad Weber someone to play with and let those combinations settle in, because it's been a long time since he's played with Cruden, really, and he's not played with Caleb Trask either. They're from different my 10 Cup provinces. So, look, I don't understand this changing it all the time unless something's going on. Good to see Antoinette Brown back out at 13, where we're seeing him play a lot better than being closer in. And real shame about Solomon Alomalo's dislocated shoulder when Caleb Clark landed on him after he scored the try. Look, some people saying he tripped, but that's the Blues. That's actually Blues glasses. If you got your black glasses or your red, yellow, and black glasses on, then you'll say that Caleb Trask dived on him after he'd scored, and it was a late hit, and they should have a penalty halfway afterwards. It was clumsy, definitely. Was it malicious? I don't think so, but it was definitely clumsy. A real shame to see that he's out now again, because he's a guy that's had quite a few injuries recently and not had the game time. Someone maybe about 3 years ago now, I think he probably is. People were talking about this being potentially an All Black as well. So he's just not had the game time since then. So that's a real shame to see him get injured in that game.
Massive shame. Complete shame. He's their spark. He is a spark player who can create nothing. He can create from nothing. He can give you a try. He can finish. He's fast. He's strong. He's agile. He beats defenders one-on-one. He was solely his return made me think that the Chiefs can actually pick up a win this season. In his absence, I just don't get that same sort of impression. Wainui's a good winger. Stevenson's a good, strong ball carrier, but they're not those X-factor wingers. They're good, solid, do no wrong. They'll consistently give you a good performance, but they're not going to just do something unbelievable that could turn the game on its head. We see guys like Alomalo doing that, and the capabilities he's got just can change the game. So massive disappointment, not only for the Chiefs, but I think just for rugby fans, because he's a guy that you go to watch. He's a guy that you go to see. So I'm really disappointed by that. I think if anyone's not wearing blue glasses, they're probably a bit annoyed about that tackle, no matter what colour your glasses are, if you're wearing any at all. But yeah, that's a real shame. I'm disappointed, Paul, that we didn't get to talk too much about that penalty on the review show on New Zealand Sports Radio earlier this week, because I've watched it back. I watched it back afterwards, and I sit here shaking my head. And the more I see the pictures, and the more I just look at Goodhue there with his knee on the ground as he takes the player and is holding onto the ball, and I'm just like, how is this even how? It's like I can see, from the side that his knee's on the ground. I'm completely bamboozled by that one. And I mean, it's weird, and not very often that you see players like Anton Leonard-Brown absolutely blowing up, because they're normally quite calm, non-confrontational sort of guy. He's not going to, he's not a TJ Perenara sort of player who would be, he would be just exploding if that happened to his team. So something's up when those guys really get up in arms. And when you watch it back, I'm a bit, wondering how that happened. They've been hard done by the poor old Chiefs. I would have been flat out happy if they actually snuck that one at the end against the Blues. It would have been a fairy tale finish, absolute cracker of a finish to the game. But yeah, the Blues, give them a bit of credit. I guess they come on strong pretty much throughout that game. I think the big highlight for me was Alomalo, the man of the moment, stealing that slap in from the sideline. when it was they tried to keep it in. So falling asleep there, the Blues at the back. So that was a highlight for me, because teams always, do that silly thing, and it just ruins a good penalty kick. Absolutely ruins it. So, yes, I got a big yahoo and a shout for that one for Alomalo as well. But, yeah, Chiefs looking better and better every single week, but just can't get over the line. And I think now it's sort of becoming a mental thing for them, because they just don't know how to win. It's the Blues of old, isn't it? Now they've got to become that team that can get in a position to win, but just don't know how to finish off the job, which is a bit of a concern, because, they've got the super coach, as they think they call him up there in the Tron, and they've got the super players, and they're just not putting in the super performances as well. And this week's going to be so tough for them, but they've got a lot on the line now. Last home game, last chance to impress the fans, last chance to do something special for 2020 in their own home stadium. So hopefully for the Chiefs, we see some special performance from them.
Look, you bring up a good point. I mean, look, from the Blues' point of view, yeah, they fell asleep at that penalty. If you've got to go, the winger goes out there to try and knock it back in. He did his job. But you're also supposed to have some players over that side. You're not supposed to be having a huddle on the far side of the pitch, deciding what you're going to do at line out when you're receiving a penalty. I mean, seriously, guys, they fell asleep there. They made up for it with their defence. Yes. Were they borderline? Absolutely. But good defences are borderline. Harry Plummer did the exact right thing. He laid all over the ball, under the posts, got himself a yellow card, but it allowed the defence to reset. So, yes, they were very, the euphemism is, very professional with their defence at the end there, and it saw them over the line. But but some old habits falling in there for the Blues, which is worrying around that. Lapse in concentration. I can't remember what it was, but there was a similar thing happened the week before as well, where they had a lapse in concentration against the Hurricanes, which and obviously they didn't get out of jail that time. They came up short. So yeah, they need to concentrate for the full 80 minutes this weekend.
Well, I must say, I didn't quite understand the early switch of Bowden Barrett there. I thought he could have stuck with him at 10 for another little bit. I think that was a bit of an early call, and I don't know, still to me, Plummer doesn't offer much when he comes onto the park. But let's go straight into the Chiefs game here. We said it now. I think a few weeks ago, or the previous week, we said it about the Highlanders, where you keep knocking and either you're going to eventually pick up that win, or you're going to pick up a beating where you almost just throw in the towel with 20 to go and realize, listen, it's no use scrapping for another 5-point loss here. So which way is it going to go against the Crusaders this week? A Crusaders team, as we said, hurting, but a Chiefs team lost home game. Cruden playing his 100. Which way is it going to go, Cornflake?
Well, that the Chiefs are going to throw everything they can at it. They're going to chuck the kitchen sink. I hope they will go out with that attacking mentality of, like you say, live or die by that sword. They're either going to, try and compete out there, put points on the board. They play that first half against the Highlanders, where everything just clicks so well for them. It's unlikely to see them doing that for 80 minutes. But, I mean, if they can put that first 40 minutes of the display in, give themselves some confidence, put everything out there, and believe they can put in a victory, they still probably won't win. But they could make it a nice, entertaining matchup. The Crusaders, I think, they'll be hurting. They've lost a game, and that does not go well for them. And I think you're going to probably see a more clinical team, a more focused team. Because let's be honest, they've been just cruising along, haven't they? The Blues pushed them, and they went, yeah, okay, come on, Blues, we got this. We'll just, go to that next place and ramp it up a little bit, and we took care of those boys. Now it's like reality's struck, reality's hit for them, and they have to prove that they're good enough to actually close this competition out. They'll be looking at this. I was saying, the Hurricanes think they can win the competition now. The Blues think they can win the competition now. This will bring out the determined Crusaders. This will bring out the passionate, kind of desperate, in a way, Crusaders who will just want to put out a statement. And you won't find them going out like, the Chiefs. If they go out and throw everything at it, the Crusaders won't do that. The Crusaders will be far more composed, and they'll be far more focused on executing every single intricate detail they can in just decomposing their opposition and structurally breaking them down. Every little area they can dominate, they'll want to dominate. And that is what they'll look back at after the weekend and really grade themselves on how they went, regardless of result, because they'll want to nitpick every single aspect and look back at it and say, okay, this is where we went wrong. This is what we did better. And that's his Crusaders and how they play. That's how they get their structures, and they just play it perfectly like that to their game plan. So I expect they're going to be just, really, really, really difficult to break down, really difficult to shake from the way they're going to play. And that could be dangerous against the poor old Chiefs. So I hope they go out, and I hope things stick for them and they can make an exciting game.
So yeah, before I just go say yes, the Crusaders are going to win by lots. We should have a quick look at the Chiefs team, and I think one of the concerns has got to be that bench for the Chiefs. When you got Samasoni Talakayo as your most experienced player with 34 caps, you really are in trouble. Look, he is a good young hooker, but it's that second word, young hooker. He's young, right? He's not an experienced head. You got Ollie Norris 2 caps, Angus Ta'avo 33, Arcoy 10, Simon Parker debutant from Waikato. So on. I cover Waikato. I've got a media pass to Waikato. I go to all their games. I've got no clue who Simon Parker is. This really is someone picked from nowhere.
He's an under 20 New Zealand player.
Well, he's not played any Mitre 10 Cup, right? He's not played any senior. Pardon?
Who cares? It's all international. Right. Under 20. Under 20s. Come on.
From school to under 20, straight into Super Rugby, skipping Mitre 10 Cup entirely. Wow. So
only the elites.
Because I've been doing. I'd say I cover Mitre 10. Milo Harris 3 caps. Where's Triple T? Caleb Trask 7 caps. Tapia 10. That is a very inexperienced bench. What, 5 of them? This is their 6 of them. Sorry, 5 of them. This is their first season at Super Rugby level. So if the Chiefs, there's no coming back from the Chiefs here. They have to stay with and get ahead of those Crusaders. Otherwise, it's going to be all over.
Well, I'll tell you what, the new boy Fatuli had a bit of a hard time last week. We talked about him probably being a bit of a tough time at 13 for the Crusaders. It doesn't get easier this week. Anton Leonard-Brown, I think he's going to be eyeing that up 100% as his chance. The other one is loose forwards. I think looking at that, I know you guys probably rate some of these Crusaders guys, but from our point of view, there's not a lot of solids there, from a heck of a lot of rugby. Wetu Douglas isn't even there anymore. So I know Sione Avili is quite rated, but we'll have to see how he does for the Crusaders and at this level. And on the other side, I mean, you've got Lachlan Bosch here, who's showed his worth the last few weeks as well. Again, crucial steals. And then your man, Sam Kane, who everyone's been trying to defend and making 18 tackles in a game, and he's playing fantastic rugby. Not so sure about that, but for the bigger occasion, I'm sure he's gonna really try and lift his team this week. So it's gonna be interesting on that one. And maybe just straight onto that, what I wanted to quickly have a discussion on is the centre situation for the All Blacks. I talked to someone this week and I said it's almost unlucky being a centre in New Zealand, where you get moved to 12 as soon as you do well at 13, because it just seems like I don't know, you guys are sorted at 13, because Anton Leonard-Brown to me is a better 13 than a 12. Jack Udiu at this stage is still a better 13 to me than he is a 12, and yet everyone gets moved to that 12 spot. So who's this 13 that you guys have got locked in to start all the All Black tests, that everyone has to be moved to 12?
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because we used to have lots of 12s, and it's Sonny Bill Williams, Ryan Crotty, and then having to move them out to 13. And I mean, Charlie Nartai. I mean, we had Moala. We had loads.
Jesus, no.
We had loads and loads of players who were 12s who ended up playing 13 for the All Blacks. But now it's the other way around. Look, Anton Brown, it's his jersey. End of story. And Jack Goodhue will start at 12 for my mind.
I can't believe you said George Moala, average winger at best, let alone a blooming midfielder. Goodness gracious me. I'm going to ignore that and pretend I didn't hear it.
You've got pictures of an All Black in the midfield.
Next thing, you can say that Leon McDonald was a better fly half than Andrew Meritons and blooming Carlos Spencer at the time as well.
I'm not saying
anyway,
but I'm just saying that there were a lot of 12s at the time. Go on.
Yes, I agree with you. On the other point that you made, definitely not on Moala, but yeah, Anton Leonard-Brown for me streaks ahead as a 13 and a 12. Goodhue getting relatively better and better. I think last week, even though he was on the losing side of the result and had a patchy game defensively, I think we started to see a bit more of it as attacking ability of holding up defenders and still offloading the ball, especially in that first, I think, try that Richie Mo'unga scored, one of the first couple of tries that Mo'unga scored, where he took on 2 defenders, still offloaded the ball and gave him a clear run to the line. That's the sort of game that Goodhue can bring. He's normally, like I said, bar last week, a really, really solid defender, makes his tackles. He's a strong runner as well. And I just think suits the style of play. If you've got an Anton Lienert-Brown running outside, and I think if you're going to go for Damien McKenzie in the team as well, those two in midfield, I think, suit him a lot better as well, because he's comfortable with that sort of player. And I think we see the difference, like Paul said earlier. McKenzie's playing better, but I think he's playing better because Lienert-Brown's playing at 13. I think he just likes him having that width on it, and I think he just feels a bit more comfortable going to him or coming off him as a runner or a carrier on the inside. They just have that combination. I think they're flatmates too, aren't they? Anton Lienert-Brown and Danny and McKenzie. So they've got that chemistry as well. So those two guys are key. I think the All Blacks are going to go that way. Anton Lienert-Brown 100% has to be the 13. Goodhue is my 12. Laumape, sorry.
It's just strange to me though that someone like Rico would pretty much just say, listen, I want to be playing 13. I'll get you guys now as his potential as a 13. But someone like Anton Lienert-Brown, he surely has to know that, okay, given the current situation, 13 is where I should be focusing, and yet the first 3 or 4 games or probably longer, he couldn't get the gig. He was still doing 12. I mean, does that just mean that Warren Gatland just felt that 12 was better, or whether he wasn't confident enough saying, listen, I want to play 13? So to me, that's just a little bit of a question. But then maybe run on Rico as a 13. Is that a viable option for the All Black coaching system?
So I mean, the reason Anton Brown was at 12 is because Quintapire is someone who the people here in Hamilton, here in Waikato, see him as being a big future player at 13. So it was to try and accommodate the new guy in there. So it was like, okay, Anton, can you play 12 so we can accommodate Quintapire and see how it goes. Now it didn't work out, right? Or at least not after lockdown. And then Alex Nankivell was available to come back in to fill that 12 jersey. So it was more about trying to get certain players on the pitch rather than kind of about that. The other interesting one for me is that Geordie Barrett has came out in the off season saying he wants to play 12. He doesn't want to play fullback, and he re-signed at the Hurricanes, telling them, "I want to be a 12, and I want to get ahead of Laumape at 12." So a lot of these young guys who are sort of starting in those back 3 places, who have played all their junior rugby at centre, at second 5A, and they want to move back in. So it is an interesting conundrum, and how we're going to fill these players in.
I think Rico would go into a squad as a versatile player for the All Blacks. He's got, obviously, the ability to play on the wing. I think that could play in his advantage as being a bench option to cover midfield and the wings, depending on how the games goes and what they want to do. If you're leading by a lot, yeah, okay, give him the chance, see how he fares in the first few games or what have you, whatever chances he does have. But yeah, Laumape, like we talked about before, is a 12. He's a 12. And that's it. That's what you get. That's what you got. Rico does give you a fair bit of versatility, so I think that plays in his advantage. And yeah, not huge amount of really other options you probably would throw into a black jersey.
It's going to be between him and Geordie, isn't it? As for that 23, or maybe both of them will be on the bench.
Well, it depends who plays 10 and who plays 15, doesn't it? There's a lot
as long as you've got old Bowden on the park, you've got plenty of options running around there, so it's all good. Listen, guys, let's
15. If he's in the back line, I don't find him anywhere near as effective. The wing, he's terrible. He played a little bit in the midfield last season or season before last season, possibly. Just doesn't have that impact. He's a bit like McKenzie. He comes in, he chimes in at first receiver, he chimes in out wide to give the overlap. He picks his positions really, really well. He doesn't have that time in the back line when he's just given the ball and told to do something with it. He picks his spot better. And I find him with Mackenzie, with him defensively, Geordie is insane at fullback. He's crazy good if he really gets committed. He can stop guys, on a dime if he gets himself in the right spot. So I like him as a fullback. It's a bit like Ben Smith. Just stay off the wing. Stay back, fullback, 15.
Please keep him off the wing. I just think, as you said, it's the same as Damon McKenzie, where third, fourth phase, coming in and picking where he wants to come in. It's brilliant, and having that roaming fullback and having that freedom to use him like that, to me, is the best. Or when you've got an almost center field kind of ruck scrum situation where you can basically play both sides of the park as two creative 10 and a backup 10. So to me, that's the way to go and the way to use him. And I know we touched on this, I think, a few weeks ago about your fullback wingers, but to me, it's just the way having old Geordie on the wing. It's irrelevant. Okay, guys, let's go on to the predictions. Let's head back to the Aussies, Force and Rebels. Cornflake Paul.
Force and Rebels. Are we missing a game yet? I'm going Rebels by 9 points.
We've touched on Highlanders Blues, but I think he's running out of time.
Have we not touched on the Blues?
We've not talked about Highlanders Blues yet. As in the future
crap!
game.
Sorry, forgot about that. Okay, let's do our half an hour. Let's do our traditional half an hour on the Highlanders. Steve, big one there. Actually, what I wanted to say there is the Blues, are they starting to just lag a little bit? Yeah, have they lost that spark now? Is Satuto such a big influence for them? I was expecting. I think I told you guys. Unfortunately, I made it public on this show that they were going to smash the Chiefs, and they really didn't do that. So what's happening in the Blues camp at the moment? Even though I know you're more interested in the other camp, but let's go there first.
Oh, I know Paul's going to distinctly disagree with me, but writing my preview earlier, I said a very, very similar thing. I think that the aura of this Blues team has fallen completely off the radar. That loss to the Hurricanes was a big drop for them. They probably expected to lose to the Crusaders. I think they believed they probably could have won, but they wouldn't have been too disappointed with how they performed in that game. But I just think 2 losses on the trot has been compounded by the fact that the Hurricanes actually beat the Crusaders as well. In the mental side of the game, they've probably looked at this and gone, we couldn't do that. And now they've done that. We're kind of playing catch up now with this new top 2 teams in the competition. This is a huge game for the Blues. They've lost, I think, a lot of that core that really bulldozed that team forward. Their team style has kind of played. They've toyed with this plumber idea, and they've played around with their playmakers. They've moved players here and there. They've gone away with what worked. I think that's the biggest thing. They had a game plan. It was working well. And as the old quote goes, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. They've tried to fix it. They've thrown in the spanner. And it really has thrown in a spanner big time. It's completely broken the wheels off. And they've kind of plummeted, I think. That a little bit of normality was returned. I think Faiani makes a massive difference in that back line, but they've lost a lot of that go forward, that power that the back row had. And the fact that other teams have probably acclimatized a little bit to it as well. They've brought their own sort of style of the game into it. I think the Blues were well suited to this new rulings of the game in those first few weeks, and they come onto it pretty well, and they took the biggest advantage early on. Now things have evened out. Things are starting to get a bit steady. The refs are starting to slack on the strictness of these laws again, and the game is starting to go back to normal, and the Blues are starting to go back to normal, which I can't hide my happiness about.
Oh, dearie me. Yeah, they've fallen asleep in the last 2 weeks when they shouldn't have done, and they need to play the full 80. They've lost a bit of that concentration. I think Steve's right in the fact that the referees have slackened off massively, and the Blues nailed the new interpretations better than everyone else, and therefore did and took advantage of that. And as those new interpretations aren't being enforced anymore, they've not adapted to it, unfortunately. They'll need
Paul, just quickly, I've heard some people. I saw a message during the game, and actually went and watched the game a second time around. That everyone was like, everyone's talking about these Blues wingers, and they nowhere to be seen. But to be fair, I think Caleb Clark still had a heck of a game. I thought defensively put in a huge shift, and every time he got the ball, it was over the advantage line. He gave them go forward, and I know there's mixed reactions on Rico as well, but to me, he did the same. Every time they didn't really get him into space, but when he got the ball, he did take it forward, which is ultimately his job. So I don't think it's a case of them slacking off there. It's, I don't know, somewhere else on the park that they're having issues.
Oh, it's the pack, right? It's getting that front foot ball, so yeah, no, it's the pack. Look, it's getting that front foot ball, getting the platform, allowing the backs to play. That's where the problem is. And you say Hoskins Tutu is a big part of that. And Akira Iwani, look, he's been playing well, but look, he doesn't have the control of the ball at the back of scrums, which then means that platform's not quite working as well. Yeah, he's not Hoskins Tutu. He was doing good at 6 as the second big ball carrier, but he needs Hoskins Tutu to help him with that. Now, I mean, one thing I do want to talk about, though, is sponsorship, as I did my whole sponsorship spiel without it being recorded. So, look, New Zealand Sports Radio is looking for a beer sponsor. If you do, I will actually drink my beer without the beer cozy, and you can actually and you'll get exposure for your beer. So, yeah, beer sponsors very much welcome. There we go.
I'd like to add something in about Akira. He's like the schoolyard bully. He'll go and beat you up when he's got 6 of his mates, but when he's by himself, he'll be your best friend. Now, that's not saying anything about his personality of being a bully like that, more the fact that he is a guy that performs better on the back of someone else doing a similar job as him, like Paul says, as that second big runner. By himself, without that support, without that other go-to guy to share his workload, he's not as impactful. And I think Papali'i brings a bit of that game to him, but he's not quite that same sort of just up-and-go runner that's a Tutu Broad and that big ball carrier. And I think, yeah, if you get that tandem back working again, the Blues will get that mojo in that back row. And I think, yeah, I agree with Paul. If they just aren't getting that go-forward momentum out of that pack that allows them to quickly recycle and then have the space and time for their backs to actually do what they can do. They're doing it off the back of, settled defenses, structured defenses, and not finding the room and the space that they were in those first few weeks.
And you, what your expectations of your Islanders this week, Cornflake?
Well, it depends who's playing. So at least, Josh Ioane's going to be okay. Other than that, though, we'll see. We'll see what lineup is named. But yeah, talking about the Blues and how much I think they've kind of fallen off their horse a little bit. I said earlier, I think it was on this show or one of Paul's shows, that the Highlanders won't be beaten again at Forsyth Bar this season. I'm sticking with that because this is a team that loves to play at home. And I'm a man of my word, so I'm going to stick with what I've said. And I think at home, they've had a week's rest. They enjoyed it quite clearly. They enjoyed that week's rest. But now they've got those players back. They've got the Ioanes back. Josh Mackay is actually in the team, and I hope he's still in the team again this week as well. He makes a massive difference. Ioane makes a massive difference. That presence those guys bring lifts the team. Those are guys that can set players through holes and gaps and through defensive lines, and they are guys that themselves break defensive lines. Mackay is an X-factor player. We talked about Alo Malo before, a guy who can make something happen when nothing's on. Mackay can do that as well. The Highlanders have missed that since Waisaki left, and they need that sort of guy back again. They need a guy who they can rely on. Nareki's getting there. I think he's a player that will be that sort of guy in time. Right now, Josh Mackay's that guy. And imagine in the future, we're going to have Nareki on one wing and Mackay on the other. Will be unstoppable once again. That will be the obvious, sort of choice for the future. But yeah, I'm confident because we've got that home ground advantage. The Blues seem to be on the slide. We've got to get that mental edge, get a good start, get in front, put the pressure on the Blues, try and upset them, try and ruffle those feathers, make them chase the game, get a bit pressured, get a bit upset, and see if we can just, completely make them make errors because they're trying to force too much. They're trying to do too much. They're trying to execute their game plan outside of what they were wanting to do. So that's the big thing I think they need to do. A good start. If you give them that start they're getting against the Chiefs, you can kiss this one goodbye because I don't think the Blues will let that sort of lead slide.
Steve's getting excited there about his wingers, and they're playing against Leah and Caleb Clark. It's quite
can't defend.
It's quite sad. It's quite sad there. Paul, you think the Highlanders have got a shout in this one?
Oh, look, they've got a shout, but it's a pretty quiet shout. But look, I mean, 7 players having that have enjoyed themselves too much in Queenstown. Now, in some ways, the Highlanders are lucky that it's 7, because it means they can't drop all 7 because they wouldn't have a team to put on the park. Hence, that's the only reason that these players are going to get to play this weekend. And I think Ash Dixon put it very clearly, is that they have to show this weekend that they're sorry for what they did last weekend. So in some ways, it could be a motivating factor for the team. Otherwise, I think you'd see a few players missing. But it's going to be interesting. Do they say, right, look, 3 of the players you drop for this game, and then 4 of the players you drop for the next game, or how they discipline the players? It'll be interesting to see as to what kind of sides they put out. But yeah, that's it wasn't very clever by the players. Well, let's be blunt. Look, yeah, the Highlanders are slowly starting to pick. I mean, again, strange selections. Why hasn't Mackay been picked for a while? A bit like the Blues, strange selections. TJ Faiani, some strange selections going on. I wouldn't be surprised if there are a few more strange selections this weekend after those after that drinking binge.
Okay, can we head off to the predictions now? You're fine with that.
Let's go.
Rebels by 10.
I'm agreeing with Paul. I'm saying Rebels by 9 for me.
Okay, big one. Brumbies and the Reds.
Oh, Brumbies by 7.
Oh, he's gone big. I think this is going to be nice and close. I'm anticipating a really exciting Australian game of Super Rugby. Brumbies by 4, close and tight.
This could be one of, a bit like our mate Shane says, Friday night's fight night. It could be one of those. I know it's on Saturday night, but it could be one of those kind of games.
It's Brumbies 1 to 12 for me there, and probably even Rebels 1 to 12. I think the Force will make them. They'll bring that down to a heck of an ugly scrap. Then on to the New Zealand Chiefs Crusaders.
Well, I'm being kind. I'm going Crusaders by 5.
Ooh, you are being kind. I'm not so being kind. I thought I'd be the one doing the conservative pick here, but I've gone Crusaders by 9.
Okay, Crusaders by plenty for me. But I say that every week. And then on to the Highlanders.
I guess the other point is we've only had, I think it's like 1 or 2 games that haven't been that have been more than a score difference. So hence that's why I've gone down to a score, is because only 2 games in Super Rugby Aotearoa have been decided by more than a score.
True. Yeah. Also, actually, in the betting, I quite like the halftime, full-time plays. So I wouldn't mind going Chiefs, Crusaders, Chiefs to lead at halftime, and Crusaders to come back and beat them. That's the kind of play I like, and you get quite nice odds as well. And then the last one out there, okay, Islanders, Blues. I have a feeling I know where this one's going to go.
Blues by 3.
They say in the government down here, go out and enjoy your country. You can't travel overseas, so make the most of living local. Go and experience New Zealand because we can. And, who can blame the players for going out and having a bit of fun? We're going to be fired up. Highlanders going to get the job done. It won't be a big win. It probably won't be pretty, but it will be a W by 1 for the Highlanders. Bring it home.
It sounds like things went a bit zoo-like for some of those players, and this time they're going to have to do it in front of the zoo. So let's see, as you guys say, why not have a bit of a good time, but keep it on the pitch this weekend. And to everyone out there, enjoy the weekend if you have to, but even if you don't, I'm sure you're going to be stuck to the rugby. So thanks to my guests for joining me, and enjoy the rugby this weekend.
Thank you.